Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to do some Noline coloring with Copic markers as well as with a few pencils. It's something that I want to improve myself on. It's something daunting, but I tried some Noline coloring already. I would suggest doing this with not as detailed images as this one. What do I mean with that? It's just tiny stars, tiny body of the bear that's sitting in the air balloon and such. That's just something that I want to give with you, but I tried it however with this image just because I wanted to get back on this image. This image is the one that got me convinced about my favorite things last year. And since then, every stamp that is released by my favorite things is just a winner in my eyes. That's also why I have a lot of videos with my favorite things lately. And I just made, I think, 3 cards last year with it. And I realized that I never made one with rainbow colors. So I'm changing that today. Also, I want to get more use out of my older stamp sets. I don't want them to be forgotten in 2021, which is something I tend to do. Like, there are new things coming in and then they go first and then other new stuff is coming in because, well, we never stop buying supplies. So just to avoid stamps getting lost in my craft room, I decided to take this adorable stamp set back out and just do something with it. So since I'm doing Noline coloring with Copic markers, I have stamped this out using Ink on 3 Fadeout Noline coloring detail ink. Now I'm doing that because this ink is fabulous. I have said it in the past, I'm not using it when I'm doing distress inks because I think it has a better result when I use distress inks with distress inks. But for markers, for zigs, I just use this one. And I love it. Something that I really need to be careful with when I'm using this ink is that I really go slow. Just to have all the details when I'm doing the Noline coloring, I really need to go step by step, don't rush it. Really first adding all the shadows and then I'm adding the lighter tones one by one. Otherwise I get lost, but that's just how it goes when you want to do Noline coloring. Also, markers, they aren't as thin. There exist thinner nibs, but I think that's really expensive, so I haven't purchased that yet. I don't know if I will ever do it, but it takes a bit more time to go slow, to get all the details in it. Something that I also didn't really like in the past when trying the Noline coloring with markers was that sometimes it's really hard to get some depth into your images. Now I saw a lot of people doing it and I did it today, is just use some pencils. And I will later on, when this image is colored in completely, I will sort of show you how I tackle that. But yeah, I'm trying to add my shadows first now, and sometimes you don't really need pencils. I have something colored in, still need to make cards with it, but yeah, sometimes there is enough depth, truly is. And for the pencils, I'm using Polychromos pencils. You don't need the Polychromos necessarily. In my opinion, every pencil will work and you don't need a complete set. Of course, it can be easier to find the right colors when you have a huge set, but just be aware that it is really expensive buying huge sets of color pencils, and maybe just to do this, it's maybe just a bit much. I bought my set last year when there was a huge discount in a specific store that currently isn't selling them anymore. But that's how I got mine. I'm not going to buy such supplies and such an investment without having some sort of a discount. So just be aware of that, but try it with the pencils you have at home. Also, there will be other cards that I'm sharing with Noline coloring with Copic Markers. I'm going to try to give it this year a bit more of a go, just because Copic Markers are a medium that most of you are used of, more than, for example, doing watercoloring with distress inks or with whatever watercolor ink you have. You are more used of Copics, but then the Noline coloring just is an added difficulty for me, probably also for you. So that's why I want to get better in that and show you how you can tackle things. But in my opinion, learning this all depends on the image you are choosing to use first. I would go for a really simple image first and just build up from there. But this video is going up first because those images that I've colored in, and I will say it when I make my first video with it, but the images that were easier to color in made me more confident to do this. And however this worked out fine in my opinion, I know that next time that I'm using my Copic markers to do some Noline coloring, that I will go for an easier image than this one. So I hope that that is sort of clear what I mean with easier, what I mean with a more detailed image. It's not that it's not possible, because you can see here, in my opinion, it worked. But it just, yeah, it's not as easy. And I just think that if you are new to things or you want to try new techniques, you shouldn't be daunting yourself with doing really intricate stuff while you're already challenging yourself with the new technique that you want to do. So that's my take on that. So I'm already onto the yellows. And actually my yellows, I don't have a lot of yellow markers. I need to invest in some more because my transition between these three was just terrible. But I just kept working on it. I don't know if I said it in the beginning, but this is perfect coloring paper by Transotype. So I can add a lot of layers without having any trouble with bleeding. So that's why I'm using this paper, of course. And that really helps for the yellows, for the greens. Also an advantage when you are using pencils to help you with depth and shadows when you're doing no-line coloring with, for example, markers. If your transition isn't working out with the markers, maybe your pencil will help with transition. So that it will also do for me for some of the colors. Also for the bears, I don't really have a brown that I really like as being a darker one towards the E33 that I used. So I just added a darker brown color pencil to help me with some more depth there. So for the blues, also don't have a lot of Bs. I always buy BGs. So I just tested the darkest one on the side to make sure that it would fit with the ones that I had for the greens and the other rainbow colors. So I'm just trying to add some more details towards my air balloon, and once I'm happy with that, I am switching towards my pencils. Now, I don't know if you remember or if you saw that specific video, but I have a bullet journal that I wasn't using as a bullet journal, and I decided to make it my little swatch book. So I have swatched out all my pencils inside of this bullet journal. So what I do is I just take my image towards my pencil colors that I have in the book, and I write the numbers on the post-it note so that I can later on take all of them out of the box. I try to find a color pencil that is sort of the mid-tone between my darkest and my lightest color that I used on the rainbow. And for the bear as well, searching for the mid-tone to have a nicer transition most of the times between the mid-tone and my lightest color. But as I said, you can also try to find a darker one. And I did that for the bears today. So I am going to add a dark brown to them as well. Now, I'm not a color expert when it comes to pencils, not even when it comes to Copic markers or distressings, but I'm definitely not an expert in pencils. And I must admit, when you just colored an entire image with Copic markers, the feel of a pencil is really different. So before adding my pencil to my image, I prefer just adding a bit on the side to just get a feel of it, and then I go to my image to really use it. You can do gradients with pencils just by changing the pressure that you're using. You can go in a circular motion. I prefer doing a circular motion when I try to help with transition of the markers with my pencils. So that's what I most of the time do. Sometimes I'm a bit lazy and then I do not do circles, but I think, in my opinion, doing the circular motion is the most effective one. So from time to time you see me go with this eraser, and what I do there is I actually erase on the area where I didn't add pencil, and I just fade out into the lighter area where I did use the pencil, so that I sort of have a nicer transition between the area without and with pencils. But maybe that's a bit weird, but sometimes it just doesn't seem smooth, so I just use the eraser. Yeah. Here I'm adding that darker brown right on the edge where I added my E33. This one is definitely darker than my marker. But normally I try to use the pencils to emphasize the colors and not to darken anything. This is the color that I chose that would go well as sort of a mid-tone. But here for the bears you will see me adding a lot of pressure at the moment, and then when I go into the lighter area I am really going so soft with the pencil. But adding the pencil all over the lighter area gives some sort of a furry feel. In my opinion, it gives it more of a plushy look, which a bear sort of is. So that's why I went over the lighter areas as well, to get that there as well. And just really softly there. On the other spaces where I want to help with transition, I have more pressure, and then my image is completely colored in. I'm using the matching dye to cut it out, and then I can continue on my background for this card. So I know that this video has a lot of coloring in it. I hope that you like it. I sped it up quite a bit, so don't you think that I am like super fast with coloring this. It takes me a lot longer than what I am used of when I'm using Copic markers. So for the background I did use this Card Front Element Builder 2 by SugarPea Designs. And I also cut out those stripes on the bottom of my panel. And now I'm going to color them in using the same Copic markers as I did for the balloon. However, I'm not using the blues because I only had 7 stripes. And I'm going to add some clouds on the top of this card, and that will be with blue, so every color will return in the background. That's also why I decided to later on add the red stripes on the bottom of this panel, because the blues and the greens really have a nice transition, so I wanted to have the greens on the top closest to the clouds. So as you see me doing here, I am truly using the markers that I did before on the air balloon. But this time I'm trying to some sort of decide which gradient I'm using of each color so that everything fits together. So this panel by SugarPea Designs has some dot details on the edges. So just the same as with the stitch details, I just want to keep it white. I'm just going to do some cloudy ink blending on the background so it wouldn't bother it as much. But just to keep my head sane, I decided to mask it off. I'm using this cloud stencil by My Favorite Things, and the blue that I'm using today for the ink blending is Tumbled gloss. I just thought that this blue just worked perfectly with the blue on my balloon, so that was just a handy coincidence that these markers and this blue worked perfectly together. I'm twisting and turning my stencil just to get some different clouds on this card, and once I get to those stripes I will stop ink blending and this panel is finished. So before adding everything to my card base, I first have to add a sentiment. Now, I really wanted to keep this card really simple. I put a lot of effort in this image and doing the Noline coloring, so I decided to go for a really simple sentiment, and therefore I'm using tons of type by the stamp markers. And today I am using the sentiment happiest of birthdays, because this is going to be a birthday card. I decided in 2020 that this year I was going to make more birthday cards. These cards we needed every time of the year, and every time I have a lack of birthday cards, so I really want to change that up. And then this month started and I realized that I hadn't made any birthday cards yet. So I am making this one. I added all the stripes. I just added a lot of the Paradise adhesive roller, and this way I could inlay all the stripes without having to use some liquid glue. I added my image using some thin foam squares. And now I am adding some clear drops by Studio Katia, and I just am adding them across the card, and then I will use some liquid glue to adhere this. And once everything is on there, this card is completely finished. I'm not adding glossy accents or stickles. I'm just keeping it as it is, and that will be it. So I truly hope that you enjoyed this video and that you enjoyed watching the Noline coloring with the Copic markers. If you have any questions, you can always leave them down below. I'm truly grateful that you took the time to watch this video, and I hope that you have a wonderful day left, and I will be back soon with a new card. Bye!